Welcome back, freshwater fishing novices, new viewers. This week we're talking about fall winter fishing techniques. Why am I talking about this? Got a comment. I did a community post. Here, I'll pop it up right here. So I said, even though it's chilly, there's still fish to catch. And I got a message from Adrian, and he was saying, do you have any techniques for fall fishing? Well, Adrian, really depends on where you are in the country. I'm up north, kind of near Canada, so we're pretty much inching towards winter at this point. We're going to talk about some techniques. We're going to talk about where the fish go, what happens to the water bodies, and then last but not least, I got another message from one of my buddies, Brett. He was asking questions about telescoping rods, two-piece rods, and I'm going to address that at the end. So Brett, hang in for that. If you guys are interested in hearing about the strengths and weaknesses of telescoping rods, two-piece rods, stay till the end. I want to talk about bodies of water in the ponds, lakes, streams, and creeks, rivers. They all behave differently. Not extremely differently, but enough to where if I go to a creek or a stream in my area, and then I go to a river, and then maybe I go to a pond and a lake, all those bodies of water kind of tend to act a little bit differently. If you're down south, your bodies of water might act differently than the ones I'm fishing up here, because the ones in my area even act differently from body of water to body of water. Here's another thing you might have noticed about the water currently. The water seems a lot lower. You might say, oh, is that evaporation? It could be. It could be if you're down south, it's so hot that all the water's evaporating. Up north, above where it freezes, if you're where the water freezes, they draw the water down in a lot of larger bodies of water, simply for the reason to avoid issues with ice and the shoreline being affected and like affecting erosion and stuff like that. Sometimes they will draw down, which it's called the drawdown when you see the water, if they do that intentionally. It's also to manage vegetation. If there's invasive weeds, they'll draw it down so all that vegetation dies and it won't really mess up the shoreline. Let's talk more about water. So what happens in the late fall, early winter? The water temperature is equalizing. Not like in the summer where it will be warmer on top and cooler in the bottom. There'll be more oxygen. The fish kind of stack at a certain level. They won't go below a certain, it's called the thermocline. Big, science. So the thermocline level, or where it is, it's like an invisible line in the water. I don't know where it is. I know it exists. The fish, they don't go down below that. But in the winter, the water equalizes, so the range of the area these fish can go in expands. They can be anywhere because all the water is equalized, the oxygen levels are equalized. So the fish will have more of a space to move around. So it's going to be harder to locate them. That's good and bad. Now, typically, you're going to want to fish deeper. At least that's what I've heard from much better fishermen and anglers than myself. That being said, I'm listening to these other fishermen. So when I go out fishing, instead of fishing right up at shore where it's shallow, I'm looking at the body of water I'm on. And if it's really steep, I'm not coming quite as far off of the shoreline. 20 feet, 30 feet from the shoreline, 50 feet out from the shoreline. And I'm fishing parallel to the shorelines like this, but in that depth range. What fish are looking to be deep and comfortable, but they have access to go hit bait, go back down, relax and chill, and digest that food. You're going to want to fish deeper, and it depends on how cold the water is, how deep you're going to have to go, how deep the body of water is. So I don't know if that helped at all. I hope that's hitting home with some of you. Now, it's problematic if you don't have a fish finder, which I don't. I'm usually guessing when I go out fishing. I think this is deep, or I'll look at a Navionics or I think it's called a bathymetry. It shows how steep and where the drops are in the body of water with the lines. So guessing off of that, I look for where the lines are really still. I'm going to put a picture up here just of a pond with a bathymetry, and I'm going to put an arrow right here where you can see the lines are stacked up pretty tight. Now that's a steep drop off. Now if you see the lines are more spaced out, that's more of a shallow gradual thing. So I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to look for those tight clumped up lines that are right up against either rock or a steeper bank, maybe a cliff edge if you have them. So that's where I'm going to focus my attention, and I'm going to come out off of that bank, 20, 30 feet, wherever it's about more than 12 feet, even deeper. You know, you're gonna catch fish fairly deep when it's cold because they're gonna be down, just kind of not moving because they're trying to conserve energy just to make it through the winter if it freezes where you are. They're just kind of lethargic, they're in the bottom, chilling out. But the upside is these fish really bunch up together. You'll find different species of fish together. They'll just be clumped up, hanging out. But the problem is locating them. So once you locate fish, you can just kind of realize that these fish aren't going to really move throughout the winter. They're going to kind of stay in that spot. So you know where to go now, and you know where most of the fish are. But locating them, that's the issue. Now I'm going to talk about two techniques that are reaction lures. If you don't know about reaction lures, what you're doing is you're not trying to entice the fish to eat because it looks like food. You're trying to get an angry reaction out of these fish. Make them angry, really tick them off so they can't help, but it's like it's a built-in mechanism. They have to hit it. The first technique that's been working for me, since the fish are deeper, I'm using a jerkbait that goes a little bit deeper. Now this one dives 9 feet. My least deep one dives 6 feet. And then I have one right here that dives 12 feet. When it's cold and they're stacked up on the bottom, I'm gonna start, depending on how deep the water body is, the 12 or the 9-foot jerkbait. I know it works when it's cold because it's been working for me. When it's cold, it was like 49 out. I got video of that. Wait, I think I put that video out. I'm throwing a jerkbait. It was the only thing that was working. It was 49 degrees. I know it works in cold water. The only thing you're gonna do when it's hot or it's warmer and you're using, like, say, a shallower jerkbait, your jerks and your twitches are gonna be more aggressive and faster. So twitch, twitch, pause, twitch, 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 pause, twitch, pause, twitch, twitch, pause. Like, that's the cadence you're looking for when it's a little bit warmer. When it's cold, it's gonna be twitch, 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 twitch. The space between the jerks is going to increase the colder the water gets. The next technique that I'm going to talk about was working pretty good for smallmouth bass. I know the smallmouth bass like a little bit colder water, so I've kind of been focusing on those lately. Since we're trying to get deeper, you're going to go with a deeper crankbait. You can see how long that bill is. You can see how skinny that lure is too. What a skinnier lure does, a tight wobble. This is called a fat free shad. You can see the bill on that. The reason I bought it is because the bill is so big. This has a really tight wobble as well. And I've been absolutely crushing smallmouth bass on that bomber. Adrian, I hope that answered your question about different techniques. It's not anything anyone else isn't saying. But now let's talk about Brett's message again to me right here. So what he's saying is, he was wondering what the pros and cons, the upsides and downsides of a telescoping rod versus a two-piece rod are. He likes the fact that he can bring it wherever he wants. That is the upside, Brett. The upside to a telescoping rod is that it collapses, it packs up, and it's easily transportable. If you're gonna fly, they're a good rod because it's small, you don't have to check it. You can bring it on your carry-on. Now, what's the downside of a telescoping rod? What I've found is when I've used telescoping rods, I noticed a lack of sensitivity. And I've heard that every time there is a different segment of a rod, you know, say there's 7 segments that pull out, you're gonna lose just a little bit of sensitivity. You might not even notice. The other thing that's a problem is that everywhere that there's a different segment, it's a weak point. That is a possibility for the rod to break. And I found that out when I let my friend Chris borrow one of my only telescoping rod, and he broke it. But it wasn't an expensive rod, so I don't really care. And he liked it till he broke it. He got too big of a fish for it, and it snapped. The other downside I noticed is sometimes if you don't check each section of that telescoping rod, sometimes the section will spin, and now your eyelets, it's not lined up, so you're kind of constantly readjusting it. So it's kind of a pain in the butt too. With a two-piece rod, same kind of thing applies as with a telescoping rod. That section that's going to be a weak point where it might break. I've also noticed with a two-piece rod, I've had that spinning happen like with the telescoping where the eyelets are all of a sudden cockeyed and the lines, you know, you got to readjust it. I've also casted larger lures with a 2-piece rod, and the whole top section comes off. You're holding the back section, the line's running through, you got your top section of the rod in the water, you got to reel it up, the lure catches the rod, you know, top part, and then you got to put it back together, and I hate it, drives me bananas. So the upside to the 2-piece rod is it's going to be a little stronger than a telescoping rod. It's a little bit more problematic to carry because it's a little bit longer. I mean, you know, that's not that big. You could tuck that somewhere in the back seat and it's not in the way. If I had to choose between a telescoping and a 2-piece, just for strength, I'd go with the 2-piece. All right, Adrian, Brett, new viewers, hope you all liked it. I hope you all, I don't say y'all. Hope all you anglers, fishermen, enjoyed this video, learned something about the fall to winter transition. Maybe you found out a new technique, heard some information about where the fish are going. Maybe that will help you key in on where these fish are. Catch you next week.